Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thank you for joining me. So, No Dime December is almost upon us. The month-long spending freeze that JGigs has called for starts December 1, and that should be less than 24 hours from the moment this video drops. Now, the conversation is ongoing in the community and also amongst the content creators. In fact, here is a recent video from Hell Hades himself entitled, "What Do We Want from Plarium?" So in today's video, I am going to do my second reaction video ever and react to this video by HH. In addition, I'm going to add some of my own insights and information to the conversation. And at the very end, I will also give a very clear and detailed explanation of what I think the answer is to the question, what do we want from Plarium? So if you're already on board with the movement, or if you're undecided, or even if you're just curious about what this conversation is all about, I think this video could be very valuable. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started. Okay, just one quick note. I think this conversation is really important, not just to the raid community, but to gamers in general. The aggressive monetization of gaming publishers recently, in recent years, say the last 10 to 15 years, has gotten out of hand, and I think we're approaching a tipping point. So I think we're going to see movements like No Dime December more and more frequently in the coming months and years. As a result, there may be people who are interested in what's going on here outside of just the raid community. So if you can do me a favor and hit that like button, that'll help us get this video in front of as many eyes as possible. In addition, please link this video to any communities you feel might be interested in this conversation. And one last thing I would say is I don't have direct access to any of the other content creators. So if you could mention this video in their discords, in their communities, I would love to be part of the conversation. Just so you know, I have applied to the content creator program, but it may be that my involvement or support of No Dime December may keep me out of that content creator program. So if I can't be directly involved in any conversations with Plarium, I would at least like my ideas to be presented to the other content creators who may be in the room if Plarium ever comes to the table. Thank you for all the support, and let's get started.
Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, I'm quite interested in covering a topic with a bit of detail here. So we kind of got this whole No Spend December thing coming up in a couple of days. Yeah, and I went back and I rewatched both JGigs' videos actually, because one of the things I've been struggling with here is like, what are we trying to achieve? I come from a big corporate background. Yeah, before I did YouTube, I was a sales director for a big blue chip company. I had to write kind of like a 5-year plan for my team, which then goes into other people's 5-year plans, which basically all sync into the board's plan. And the board's plan will be very, very top line about pulling certain levers. So it might be, we want to grow our profit line by this. It might be, actually, we want to grow our customer base by X. You know, we want to get into these new areas, whatever it is. Like they will have 3 or 4 real kind of like top level directional plans and then some real specific financial goals. Okay. So I'm looking at this kind of like No Spend December thing, and I'm like, what do we want? How do we know if we won? What's the kind of aim here? And I did go back over JD's video.
Okay, so we get a little bit of background here on HH. If you've watched his other videos, you know that he comes from a sales background. And I think he's actually prepping us for 2 different things here. One is he's saying that companies often have sort of a philosophy. They have goals. They have very specific stated purposes. And I think what he's saying is we don't have that as a movement. The No Dime December movement doesn't really have clearly stated goals or a philosophy of operation. And so what he's saying is, you know, that's how you are effective. That's how I've been effective in my past job. And clearly, you know, he's very good at creating new business here with Raid and Fateless. So, you know, this is what he's saying. Probably he's leaning into this. He's saying this is something that we may want to consider in order to make our movement more effective. I think the second thing he's actually doing is talking about Plarium and Aristocrat. Aristocrat is the parent company of Plarium, and he's going to get into Aristocrat's financial report, sort of an investor report, later on in the video. But he's also letting us know that that's what Plarium is doing. That's what Aristocrat is doing. They have a philosophy of action, and it's spelled out from the top all the way to the bottom. Everybody has their directives. And that allows them to not only have direction and purpose, but to allow them to measure their success. And so I think he's saying to us, we should do the same thing. And we should also be prepared for the fact that our mission, our movement may fly in the face of Plarium and Aristocrats' plans. So he might be prepping us for confrontation down the road. All right, let's see what else he has to say.
Videos in detail. So I was like, what are we asking for? And I don't think it's very clear. I don't think it's very clear. I already see some comments which honestly for me are silly. Yeah, it's like, oh, we've got new content dropping. That's got to be a result of these videos. No, that's been planned for like the last 4 months. Come on. Stuff like, oh, the Cyber Monday 2x Primal thing, that's got to be a result of this. But let's be clear, nothing's changed yet. There will be no actions yet. Okay, so let's not try.
He's right about that. Big corporations don't move that quickly. There's too much inertia, right? We're just talking about a plan. Like those plans have been in place for months. And so while Plarium may be aware of No Dime December, they may be aware of the community's feelings about it. They probably haven't reacted yet, and they're waiting to get more information, or they've begun to put a plan in place, but it hasn't been carried out yet and probably won't be. So if you're seeing anything positive in the game, that's something that Plarium has already planned probably for several months. And that's great to see positive things coming out in the game. We know new content is launching very soon. So that's all good stuff. But what we were actually concerned about and what we're trying to get done here hasn't even started. We are at the very, very beginning.
Try and like gloss up what we think we're already doing. So far, nothing's changed. Okay. So I think it's important to say, well, what do we actually want? And what I'm going to do is go through a really good post actually from a comment that someone left on one of my videos and kind of like go through some of those points. But I also want to go through in some detail the Aristocrat November investor document, okay? Because that's important to understand where we are right now. No, I don't want to offer. Thank you very much. So yeah, in Jay Diggs' video, basically saying the game's in a bad state, missing its potential.
Okay, so what HH did here is he watched Jay Giggs' 2 videos, the first 2 videos, and he's kind of responding to them here, and he's saying that, you know, Jay Giggs has some expression of frustration, he has some ideas, but he hasn't clearly outlined what the movement needs to accomplish. Now, the day that this video dropped, Jay Giggs did in fact outline a little bit more specifically what he wants out of the movement. So HH brought up the question and Jay Giggs answered it the same day without even knowing that HH was asking the question. That being said, I still think there's real good insight here from HH. And in fact, if you go and watch Jay Giggs' latest video about it, there's still space. There's still space for more people to give input. In fact, he asks for more input. He says it's an ongoing discussion. He is the face. Jay Giggs is the face of the movement, but I don't think he by any means thinks he's the sole arbiter of what we need to ask for or how we need to execute this. I think he would very much invite other content creators and community members to the table to say, let's do this together. And I don't personally want to leave him out on that limb by himself. I think we're stronger together. I think more ideas and more perspectives is valuable. And this is where HH comes in. So I'm actually going to jump a little bit forward here because I want to get to another point that HH makes.
Unfortunately, Jay Diggs, the opposite occurs, right? Whenever you kind of do this big call out, then said that already. Jay Diggs goes on to say he wants the game to get better, he wants stuff to be excited about. He still has fun playing it free to play, which is a bit of a counter argument. But anyway, he doesn't want creator.
That's not a counter argument. To have fun with a good game and to think that the game is monetized in an, you know, an exploitative way, those two things they can be separate from one another. That's not a counter argument. I'm sorry, I cut him off right there. I'm going to replay that last little bit though.
About he still has fun playing it free to play, which is a bit of a counter argument. But anyway, he doesn't want creator hate. Unfortunately, Jay Diggs, the opposite occurs, right? Whenever you kind of do this big call out, then you know you kind of wind up the hornet's nest, and the people that just want to hate are going to hate.
I do want to address this because I think that HH is right to some extent that when you start some kind of potential conflict, when you start trying to organize to change things, some people are going to be upset on both sides. And as a result, some people will act in irrational ways or they'll act in frustrated ways. They'll lash out. And they may lash out at content creators, whoever they feel is on the side of the enemy. They may you know, speak unkindly to. I get that every once in a while. I don't get it very often. I think this community is really good. I do, however, want to support Jay Giggs in this because I think that he expressed his dislike of that, right? He told his viewers very clearly, I don't want you attacking other content creators who disagree with me. I don't want you attacking other players who disagree with me. And I think that's a good thing for Jay Giggs to stand up and say. That's another form of leadership, right? To look at the people who are supporting you and say, I appreciate your support, but simultaneously, the way you support me also matters to me. And so if you want to support me specifically, we want to do it in a particular way. So I understand that, you know, HH, he's had moments where people have attacked him, and he's done a very good job, I think, of both speaking up for himself, standing up for himself, apologizing when he's needed to apologize, and defending people who couldn't defend themselves. So I think that, you know, he's probably gotten some undue criticism that he definitely doesn't deserve because he's clearly not fully on board with this movement. But I think the hesitation that he has, the reservations that he has are valid, and we need to hear him out. And then hopefully we can convince him, because he would be a very powerful and important ally. He is a huge voice in the scene, and he, more than anybody else, would be somebody that Plarium would listen to. So rather than attacking him, we should be trying to convince him. And nobody wants to be convinced. You know, nobody is ever convinced by being attacked. That's just not a thing that happens. You know, human nature does not work in that way. All right, let's continue.
Which is unfortunate, honestly, because it kind of, for me, it devalues the movement. You know, I've got so many comments recently. Oh, you're spineless. You're a shill. I don't know. I don't even know what we're trying to achieve. Like, I don't know what I'm signing up to. I'll be honest. I looked actually for October, November. I spent about $500.
Okay, before we get into this, so he doesn't know what it's about. He doesn't know what it's about, and he doesn't want to get involved without knowing what it's about, what it's trying to accomplish, and what people really feel. Now, as far as players are concerned, he is a bit detached from their experience. His experience and their HH's experience and the regular gamer's experience of Raid is very different. And we're going to get some clear evidence of this right now. And this is going to be the first point that I think HH is really, he's missing something here. He's not understanding something here. And it's reasonable that he doesn't. We understand that his perspective is different than ours. But I'm gonna back it up just a few seconds so that you can get the full statement here.
Know what we're trying to achieve. Like, I don't know what I'm signing up to. I'll be honest. I looked actually for October, November. I spent about $500 each month. October, November. Pretty much most of it would have been through shards, yeah, for doing like shard videos and stuff. Which, by the way, is way less than I spent when I used to work in London on my monthly train ticket, let alone all the other stuff I used to have for expenses for a job. So I'm in a slightly different vibe from you guys, or for most of you guys, in that, you know, this is actually a job. But still, that's a reasonable expenditure, right? $500 a month. So I could not.
Okay. There's a lot to unpack right here. So clearly, Hell Hades is a business person. He owns a business. He operates a business. And business expenses are part of operating a business. And so $500 a month for shards that allow him to create content is, in fact, a reasonable expenditure, as he states it. He says it's less than he used to spend commuting to work. Now, if you just take that statement by itself, that is completely reasonable from a business person standpoint, business owner, business operator standpoint. It's an expense. He probably makes profit off of that, just like, you know, the money you spend to commute to your job allows you to get paid from your job. So the money he spends per month, $500 over the last couple of months, has allowed him to create content that he gets paid for, allows him to position himself as the top dog in the community, and that drives traffic to his website. It allows him to sell merchandise. It allows him to get paid greater amounts for sponsorships. So he benefits from spending that $500. The player does not in the same way. If you spent $500 a month the last 2 months and you've spent $1,000 and you're not a content creator, all you've gotten out of it is the game experience, whatever you've gotten in game. And it's not a reasonable expenditure. $500 a month on a single game is not, by any stretch, a reasonable expenditure for anybody who makes a living wage, who is middle class or working class or below. $500 a month on a video game is an absurd number. There are people who have spent it and think it's an absurd number. There are people who spend 3 times that and realize it's an absurd number. Now, there are people who have incomes where it doesn't matter. That $500 doesn't mean anything. But I would say that is less a part of the population here than any other part of the population, right? That is 1, 2, 3% of the game, maybe. And the rest of us think $500 is an absurd amount of money to spend on a game, any game. And the fact that it's starting to feel normal, the fact that that expenditure has been normalized over the last decade is the reason that this movement is important. In 2010, you could have gone and bought a game or gotten a digital download for a game for anywhere from, say, $30 to $100 for a AAA title. That game could have given you hundreds of hours of enjoyment. It would have had an online multi-battle, multiplayer component to it. It would have had a story. It would have had whatever it was, whatever kind of game it was. It would have been a well-established, long-lasting title for that amount of money, even if that's only, say, 50 hours or 100 hours. If it was an MMO, you could have spent that amount of money over the course of the year for a subscription, say in the $150 range, maybe $180 range, plus the packs and expansions. And you could have gotten thousands of hours of gaming enjoyment out of that amount of money. So say you in 2010, you bought World of Warcraft and all of its expansions and a monthly subscription. I don't think you would have spent $500. I think you would have spent less than $500 for the entire year. And you would have gotten thousands of hours of enjoyment. So the fact that this feels reasonable to anybody is concerning to me personally. But let's continue and see what HH has to say.
Not spend that 500 in December wouldn't make a difference to my account. So I'm not against the no dime December thing.
If he stopped spending, it wouldn't make a difference to his account. That's the flip side of the same problem. Spending $500 in December would make no difference to his account. That's not right. That's not right. It should. That's exactly what we're saying. $500. If you spend $500 in December, you should get to January feeling like you made some progress here. Now, I get that one of the reasons why he feels that way is because he's already spent tens of thousands of dollars probably on his account and that he's played for several years. And so he's very advanced. But there should never be a point. There should never be a point in which a gamer spends $500 on a game and feels like it didn't do a thing. That's a problem. And he does say, so he's not against no dime December. He could get on board. But the reason seems to be that because it wouldn't affect him. And I don't think that's true. I think this is another place where I disagree with HH. I think it does affect him. I think it affects his community. I think it affects his viewers. I think it affects his view of games. I think it's going to affect Fateless, which is his big project. So I think he should be incredibly concerned with the way that this movement is going, because it's going to affect how he decides to monetize his game 2 years from now. So, yeah, I feel like this is a little bit of a maybe frustrated response from HH. Like he said, he's been getting attacked from the community, and maybe that combined with sort of the lack of clear direction has put a bad taste in his mouth. I definitely think he's a community guy. I don't think he's trying to hurt the community. I don't think he's shilling for Plarium at all. He's been a vocal critic of Plarium in the past, so I don't think he's afraid of that. I just think that currently his perspective isn't lined up where maybe it should be. I can't decide for him what's important to him, but there are some gaps, I think, in his perspective right now. So let's continue to see what he has to say, because he does have some valuable points to make.
That led me to ask a question, like, what do we want? What do we want here to actually enjoy Raid again? Yeah, what's the difference? And as I say, we're going to go through the aristocrat details in a minute and see what our no spend could do to them. But also, I wanted to just call out a really good post here from Cormath on a video I did the other day, which was like the first ever mythical enhanced chance from Primal Shards, yeah?
All right, so he has a post here from one of his viewers that outlines very specific needs or demands or requests, whatever, however you want to phrase it. Now, if you're interested in this, you should go to his video and watch his video on his channel. I'm going to jump ahead just a little bit more.
XYZ changes makes a lot of sense. So Cormath says, the tavern is still abysmal. I agree. I play other games now in this genre. Raid is miles behind in quality of life in the tavern, in the speed it takes to do stuff, to level up champions, all that type of stuff. Raid is a mile behind. Raid, you could go and look at Eternal Evolution, Watcher of Realms, probably Dragon Age, I'm not sure actually. But there's a bunch now that are out there that do that piece tons better. You can learn from them and you could just massively update.
Okay, so he does admit clearly that Raid is behind the times. There are games that have come out since Raid has been out, more recently than Raid, that do certain things better. And some of this is in response to Cormath's post, but this is agreement with JGigs. This is the exact agreement with JGigs. You can do things better. JGigs' primary complaint to some extent has been that this game is so good that why do you let these awful parts of it persist when you could easily fix them? And in fact, you know, it seems from JGigs' perspective that it's a lack of interest. It's a lack of caring, that Plarium doesn't like us, the players, and it doesn't really care about the game that much. And so they're just focused on profits. And so they don't fix these things. Now, HH isn't going so far, but he is saying, Raid, you've fallen behind the times. Now, JGigs, myself, HH, we all love this game. We all love playing this game. We all find it really fun and interesting. So the fact that you have 3 content creators who are saying out loud to the community that the game is falling behind the times, that it's more and more clunky, it feels outdated, it feels like Plarium doesn't care about the player experience. When you have content creators saying that, that's a bad scene. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. Okay, so now I am going to jump ahead to the investor presentation that HH just referred to. So I'm going to jump ahead about 7 minutes here. So if you want to watch those 7 minutes, make sure to go watch HH's original video.
That would spend more. There is some interesting stuff in this document. I'm going to go through it now, but I just want to call out one metric that we can absolutely understand, which is on average, players spend 93 cents per day. That's fact. Okay. It might not be necessarily fact for Raid Shadow Legends. I don't get that level of detail, but it is fact that players spend on average through Pixel United's games 93 cents a day. So if we get my trusty calculator out, I haven't even worked this through yet. Let's say that 50,000 players, we'd call it $1 for easy math. So it's gonna be $50,000 a day. So we're gonna hit Plarium's pocket if everyone did it for 1.5 million. Now obviously everyone will not do it. So let's say half the player base do that. Half the viewers that think they're in the movement actually follow through with the movement. Okay, 750K could be what we hit Plarium for, is like a, you know, you need to improve, right?
Okay. Let me back up just a second so you can see this page. All right, so we got a lot there from HH. Now, the first thing is we have to give some context for this number, 93 cents. So this is Pixel United. This is a report of Pixel United over the last year. And Pixel United is a division of Aristocrat, or I don't know if it's a division or a company under Aristocrat, but it's an umbrella company where the game, I think it's a division, I should say. So it's a division of Aristocrat, and it's the gaming division. It's the mobile gaming division. So all of the mobile games are under the umbrella of Pixel United. Now, that is not just Plarium. There are other companies that are part of Pixel United. In addition, it includes all of the titles, all of the games of all of those companies. So all of Plarium's games and all of the games of these other companies that are under the Pixel United umbrella. So as you can see there on those little circles, there are different revenue streams. There's social casino, RPG, strategy, action, casual. So there are several types of games. And again, these are from multiple publishers. So what we know is that across all of Pixel United, the average spend per day per user is 93 cents Australian dollars, in Australian dollars, right? So, you know, obviously you have to make an adjustment in terms of the currency for wherever you happen to live. But so what HH does here is he calls it roughly $1. And then he says that there are call it 50,000 active YouTube viewers in the raid community. So he's saying 50,000 of us are in the YouTube community. That's how many people that we reach ever, I guess, or regularly, you know, like in an ongoing way. And if half of those people stopped spending, it would be $25,000 a day, basically, right? So call it $1. That's $25,000 a day times 30 days is $750,000. So what he is estimating is what he thinks No Dime December might hit Plarium for. And I think he believes he's being generous. I think he believes that half of the spenders like aren't likely to stop spending. And I guess, by the way, yeah, when that 50,000 is spenders in the community. So we could have like 100,000 viewers. Half of them are spenders. That would make it 50,000. And then half of the spenders would join the movement. That would make it 25,000 at $1 a day. Now, I think that this is a big guess. I think it's a big guess. And in fact, I would suggest that the number is probably higher than 93 cents. When you're talking about average players per day, that includes free-to-play players. I also think gacha games generate more spending per day per player than non-gacha games. So I think those casual games, maybe some of the action games, maybe the social casino games, they may generate less per user. But regardless, remember that this number already accounts for free-to-play players. Right? So if 50% of our population, of our YouTube population, like if he's specifically talking about spenders, then spenders don't spend 93 cents a day. Everybody spends 93 cents per day. And he just said half of our community, I think he said early in the video, that half of the community is spenders and half isn't. Right? So out of 100,000 viewers, we have 50,000 spenders. That means in order to reach this number, they would have to spend $1.86. So already he's cut the number in half. So that brings us back roughly to the 1.5 million. If half of the spenders get on board and they average $2 a day, that would be 1.5 million. Now, I think that there's another problem with this particular number. It's that I don't think the YouTube audience is the average spender. I think the more you spend, the more you are motivated to learn about what you're spending on. And YouTube is the place where people go to learn about their games. So I think realistically, low spenders may not care that much. They might throw $10 or $20 at the game and just play it and not care about watching YouTube videos. But if you are spending $500 a month on this game, my guess is you're watching some videos. So I think the average YouTube spender could potentially be many times the average spender. Right? So we already know that this includes free-to-play players. You cut that out, that sends that number out. You also adjust for the fact that YouTube viewers might spend more than the average, and it could potentially go up again. So his generous estimate of 750,000, I think, is the absolute basement. I think that is the absolute basement. I think on average, probably 50 to 60% of my viewers still spend, even though I'm the free-to-play guy. I think that there are more whales and krakens and big spenders and mid spenders in the YouTube pool of viewers than in the average pool of players for Raid. And I also think that this 93 cents is low for a gacha game. I just don't think this is true. I think potentially we're talking about maybe 5 or 6 times, or maybe even more, the amount of revenue that Hell Hades is talking about. So as an absolute basement, I think 1.5 million makes more sense than 750,000. And I think it's more likely to be somewhere in the vicinity of like 3 million, maybe more. Now, speculation on his part, speculation on my part. You can decide who you think is more accurate. We might, neither one of us might be accurate. But I think realistically, we're looking at multiple millions of dollars a month in revenue from people in the YouTube community who play Raid. Okay, so let's move on from this and keep going.
What we hit Plarium for is like you need to improve, right? This is where it gets a bit muddy for me, because it's like, well, I don't think, and that's why I've not been like super for it. As I say, I could easily do it. I might do it. I might just do it. I just don't feel like.
Please do it. HH, please do it loudly. Please do it publicly. You're a leader in the community, and we could absolutely use your support.
People will follow through with it, right? And so if it's way...
He said he's not sure people will follow through, and that's a valid concern. You don't want to be leading a crowd of nobody, right? Like if you get out in front of this thing and you decide to do this and promote it, as a content creator, you're more likely to take a hit than anybody in the community. Like nobody else has real skin in the game other than just their enjoyment of the game. So if you're a whale and you stop whaling out, your game experience will change, and that's your skin in the game. But the flip side of that is you get to keep the money that you otherwise would have spent. So the benefit to the individual player is huge, win or lose, right? If we lose, you still save money and the game goes on the way it's been going on. If you win, you save money now and you save money in the future because we changed the way Plarium does business. There is no downside for a player to get on board with No Dime December. There really isn't. The smallest downside is just, my game's going to be a little bit different than I was used to, right? It's the Christmas month. It's the holiday month. Take that money, save it, spend it on gifts for yourself or, you know, your family, preferably your family, not yourself. But my point is go buy another game if you want. Like if you want to spend it on yourself, go ahead and do it somewhere else. But just don't spend it in Raid. But for content creators, the hit could be massive. You could get kicked out of the content creator program. You could get a copyright strike on a video. Like there are all sorts of ways that Plarium could lash out at the content creators. So his hesitation is partially because he thinks that he might get on board and the community won't follow in enough numbers to make Plarium listen, and then they can just be punitive with no repercussions. And remember, he's got a company with a bunch of employees. He needs to pay their salaries. He's got a project with more employees for a new game. I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars in investments. He's got a lot to lose. So before you start taking shots at HH, recognize that more than anybody in the community, he's got something to lose.
Less than the 50%. It might end up being that it's 300 or 400K. Still a lot of money, right? Still a lot of money. But anyway.
He dropped his estimate to 300 or 400K.
Anyway, that's what. So I feel like let's understand what we want. Let's understand what it's going to do if we actually followed through, and then let's get a bit of a better picture of what's going on in this company. So I guess the first understand this is Aristocrat's like annual statement. This is November 2023. It's going out to the investors. Yeah, these are people that they actually care about. These are people that they care about for their income. I'll get us to a chart that makes some better sense just to go through with some detail. So Aristocrat as a company pulled in $6 billion, which was 30% better than what they did in 2022. So 2023 versus 22, up 13%. And their EBIT, which is basically a profit line, was up about the same. Going out to the investors. Yeah. These are people that they actually care about. These are people that they care about.
All right, so here's a page that HH is just flipping past. He doesn't really talk about this much, but I just wanted to talk about it very quickly. You can see that for Aristocrat, 6.3 billion in revenue for 2023. And this is from a year-to-year change from September 30th, 22 to September 30th, 23. So these are very current numbers, right? 6.3 billion in revenue. That's up 13% from last year. Now, this EBITDA margin, 33.4%. You can just think of that as roughly that's profit. It's a form of profit. You don't have to be like a business major to figure some of this stuff out. You can just go ahead and look it up and get an idea of what these numbers mean. So that is the profit margin on that. Kind of. There are some adjustments that have to be made to that number. The NPATA number there is actually closer to what the actual profit is in terms of dollars. So $1.3 billion in profit. So $6.3 billion of revenue, $1.3 billion of profit. Now that's from the entire company. That's not Raid. That's not Plarium. That is literally all of Aristocrat.
For their income. I'll get us to a chart that makes some better sense just to go through with some detail. So Aristocrat as a company pulled in 6 bill, which was 30%.
Okay, so here what you have is you have 3 columns of numbers. The leftmost column here that says 2023, that is the current year's numbers. 2022 is obviously last year's numbers. The arrows, green and red, indicate the change in between those 2 years. So did it go up from 22 to 23? And then whatever the change was, that is the percentage change represented in the third column of numbers. So the operating revenue, that means just basically the revenue they brought in over 2023, was up 13% from 2022, from 5.5 billion to 6.3 billion. Again, this is all in Australian dollars, I believe.
Better than what they did in 2022. So 2023 versus 22, up 13%. And their EBIT, which is basically their profit line, was up about the same, just over 13%. So they actually made a better profit margin, but still made, honestly, a colossal amount of cash.
Profit margin, to some extent, is just how much of your revenue is profit, right? Their operating revenue went up 13%, but their profit went up 13.5%. So they actually came out half a percentage point ahead on that change.
And that flows through. So they, as a company, as Aristocrat, overall company, they are really pleased with those results, I'd imagine. Some of that might come through, honestly, acquisition. Some of their revenue growth might be acquisition. I haven't gone through.
They're really pleased with those results. That's the big takeaway here. All right, let's move ahead just a little bit.
Sections was actually one of their poorest performers year on year. Not saying it's a poor performer, but year on year compared to the other stuff, it's done worse. Okay, so
this is going back to Pixel United. Again, this is the gaming division that Plarium is part of. Now you can see in this column here, if you're not sure about the notation, anything that it's in parentheses is a loss. Anything that's not in parentheses is a gain. So up at the top of this column, you have basically that's the profit for the fiscal year 2022. Again, September to September. So September of 2021 to September of 2022. And then at the bottom is basically the profit, the dollar profit from September 22 to September 2023. You can see that the numbers are different. They generated, looks like around 227 more millions of dollars in profit. Now, these numbers are the changes in profit from the previous year. So Pixel United still made a profit, but made $36.2 million less profit than the previous year. The division of Pixel United hasn't done as well as the rest of the company has done in terms of profit for this particular year. And in fact, they've lost profit from the previous year. Now, this is really important, and we want to keep our eye on this because this is what affects RAID.
So that's definitely an area where Aristocrat would be like honed in on. You are not doing as well as the rest of our companies. Remember what I said, like you got this kind of top line business target. That's what corporates will do. You'll then go down to the individual kind of like head of CEOs of each business. They've got their own targets. Yeah. And then beneath them, all of their teams have got targets. Okay. That's the way these things work. So great. Aristocrat very happy, but there'll now be a bit of a push on Pixel United. You need to up your game. That's all.
Okay. So Aristocrat's already looking at Pixel United. Pixel United didn't do great. We don't know how RAID did in the overall scheme of things, and hopefully we'll get to that information in just a little bit.
Already happening before any of this narrative, before any of the kind of stuff we're talking about, okay? It then goes in cash flow, squeeze past that one, get past this one, and go to this one. So this is one we really care about. Pixel United, right? So Pixel United, increasing market share while responding to structural changes in stabilizing mobile gaming market. So what they're saying here is they had a downturn in revenue and a downturn in profit, and they have some call outs. So revenue's lower due to the decline in mobile game market and exit in Russia. So they've got some reasoning behind their revenue drop. Generally, the market is down, and they also decided not to work with Russia because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, all that type of stuff, right? So, which makes complete sense. Like, yeah, it would be, yeah, anyway, not to get into the politics side of stuff. Any other kind of like big call outs here? They had a focus on daily active user and daily active user quality. Well, no, not focus on daily active user. So daily active.
All right. So I want to point something out here. DAU is daily active user. That's a person who logs into the game one time a day. So however many people log into the game, That's the number that they get for daily active users. Over here on this second to bottom bullet point here, it says focus on DAU quality drove ABP DAU up 13%, approximately 13%. ABP is average bookings per daily active user. Okay, so that's you. I don't know if you can read that down here, but that's what it means. Bookings are purchases. That's what that is. So you can see up here on the chart here, it says bookings, 1.748 million. I'm sorry, I think that's 1.748 billion. And revenue is 1.764 billion. So there's a difference between bookings and revenue. I don't know what the difference specifically is. It may be revenue that's generated from other sources. But the bookings is basically player buys. It's how many dollars we've spent on all of the games for Pixel United, $1.748 billion. So what this says, and what Hellhate is going to kind of, I'll let you watch it. I don't think he really addresses the way I would see it, and maybe the way I think we need to see it for judging whether or not our movement is going to be effective. I'm just going to let him explain it, and then I'm going to jump in.
User actually was down quite significantly. Like, we're talking like a 20-odd percent, 25% drop in players across their games. That's a lot. That's a real concern. Okay, and this kind of like falls in line with what we're seeing in Raid. Less players, but what they've done to try and make sure that they still tick the box on their kind of like targets they've been set is, well, we've been able to achieve an upturn in spend of 13% from our current player base. Yeah, and that's where we get this 93 cent. They say here they're number one in the slots market with 21% share, and the number one in the squad RPG market, which is Raid Shadow Legends. Okay, but this is definitely an interesting turn. This is a concerning turn for the game, though. I've got to be honest. Like, if you're dropping, and this is not just Raid, this is all of their games, but if you're dropping this significantly 2022 into 23 in players, that's a big concern. Okay, I said, like, you've got various levers to pull. How do we get more players in? How do we make more profit? And I would imagine that this kind of like reduction or increase in spend per player, it's kind of like in-game promotions and stuff. Lack of daily active players is probably a reduction in marketing spend. Okay, we've probably seen like less stuff going on with Raid. Hopefully, the new content actually drives older players back if it's interesting, and they'll do like a marketing push as well if you still want to play the game. Like, that's what.
All right, so there's something he said right there, which is that the drop in daily average users is probably linked to a drop in marketing spend. What he's saying is they didn't spend as much money on advertising, and so their daily active users dropped. Now, I want to address several points here, so I'm sorry, I wanted you to see that whole thing before I start addressing it. So the first thing is that in the fiscal year 22, they had 5.5 million daily active users. Okay, so by the year end, they had 5.5 million daily active users in all of Pixel United. That has dropped down to 4.6 this year. Now, first of all, remember that Raid Shadow Legends is just a piece of this. So clearly, we're talking about not 4.6 million Raid users. There are far fewer Raid users. But that drop has not been matched by an equal drop in profits. In fact, their change only went down a little bit. You can see their bookings actually only went down about 4.3%. Now, that drop in players over there from 5.5 million to 4.6 million is not quite 20%. It's about something like 18% drop. So 18% fewer users, but only a 4.3% change in the bookings. And what it says here is focus on DAU. Quality drove the average bookings per daily active user up 13%. That means each remaining player spent 13% more money in 2023 than 2022. Now, this says focus on DAU quality. Who knows what that means? Who knows what Aristocrat or Pixel United or Plarium thinks of that phrase? What does that mean for them? I think for them, it means having higher quality spenders. a focus on whales. That's what I think that means. A focus on whales drove spending up 13% per user. Now, if we look at the drop in DAU, daily active user, Hell Hades just said this is probably due to a drop in marketing spend. Like they reduced their marketing budget, and so that reduced the number of daily active users. Why would that reduce the number of daily active users? It's a good question. He could be right, but how would that result in a reduction of daily active users? Well, marketing drives new players into the game. It doesn't retain the players currently in the game. I don't care what the commercials are for Raid Shadow Legends. I'm already playing it. I continue playing it because it's fun, or I leave the game because it's not fun. That's how gamers work. So if the numbers have dropped, what that means is more players have left the game than joined the game. Now, that could, one, be because there are fewer players coming into the game than there were because the marketing budget's been cut. And so they're not generating as many new users as they were. That would be one reason. A second reason, which is more in line with what we're thinking, is that more players are leaving. If more players are leaving than were leaving before, even if the same number are coming in, then there could be a drop in overall number of players. Both could also be true. Players could be leaving in increasing numbers and entering in decreasing numbers. And that would also lead to a drop. Now, that's incredibly important. That's incredibly important. Remember, they focused on whales and the numbers of players dipped, but the overall bookings only went down a tiny bit. Okay, so this is going to factor into how we view our movement, how we talk to Plarium, and how they may view us in return. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead just a minute because I want to address another point.
So it says here, Pixel United resilient portfolio performance. So you can see the mobile gaming market as a whole on the left, and then Pixel United on the right. So that the overall market in mobile gaming since like the end of pandemic and people starting going back to work, we had this kind of like massive years of growth. And then in the last 2 years, we've seen in the mobile gaming, 2022 dropped by 6, 2023 dropped by 5. Okay. And what Pixel United have done in that same time is basically beat the curve. Yeah. They're beating the market, albeit we saw in their performance, that's probably still not good enough from Aristocrat's point of view. But they were flat with the market in its height, yeah, in terms of growth. They didn't lose any of their share, or they grew their share. They didn't go down with the market in 2022. And then they beat the market in 2023 by 1%. Not by a lot, but by 1%. All of those messages, by the way, are very positive for this company. Like, they're all things that you would draw out as a positive if you were the CEO, okay?
All right. So basically, the graph on the left, the dark blue lines, that tells what the mobile game market did in general. And then on the right side, the kind of light purple, that's what the Pixel United portfolio did. And so the difference in percentages, the little red percentages here. So this is a loss of 6%. Again, it's in parentheses, so it's a loss. So from 2021 to 2022, the mobile games market went down 6%. But in that same year of 2022, Pixel United went down nothing. They're year over year, YOY, year over year. So that means that as the market went down, they stayed steady. So they outperformed the market. They did that again this year in 2023. In this case, the market went down 5%, but they only went down 4%. So they shrank, but they shrank less than the overall market. Now, what HH said here is this is all good news. This would all be things that you would say, you know, like as a CEO, were positives for your company. Beating the market by 1% is a positive. Beating the market by 1% is a positive. HH just said it, and I agree with him. When the market is declining like this, and you've beaten the market, and you've done it 2 years in a row, that's a good sign.
Like, I can't control the overall market. I can control what my business is doing, and we're doing better than the average. Is the kind of the type of vibe they would be bringing to the meeting, right?
Exactly.
Let's see.
Okay, so I wanted to make that point, but let's go ahead and jump a little bit forward again.
Pixel United's business. The casino stuff is 50%, over 50% of Pixel United's business. You can actually see in this next graph what it looks like. But Raid Shadow Legends is still the largest bookings by game of any of Pixel United's like products. It's still their massive, like, and by some way, it's still their biggest. It's 25% of their business.
Raid Shadow Legends is 25% or 24% of the bookings from 2023 in the Pixel United portfolio. Okay, now we're going to get more specific numbers in just a moment.
Yeah, it's going to be important to Aristocrat as well. So of the 417 million that they booked in year, this is where I kind of feel like just a no spend thing. Is it going to make a difference? I don't know, honestly. I don't know. But, you know, if we hit them for 700K, I wonder if they would even see it. I do. I wonder if they would even see it. In an isolated month, it's probably a concern. Over the balance of longer time, I don't think they'd see it.
And this is the point that I disagree with the most. Jay Giggs in his first video said, you know, if you don't think they're going to miss $1.5 million, you're mistaken. If you don't think they're going to miss $500,000, you're mistaken. So remember that this $417 million in bookings, that's what Raid Shadow Legends did last year. They pulled in $417 million. So now the question becomes, if we pull $1 million a month out of their revenue, call it $1 million, what does that look like? How much is that? Well, out of $400 million of revenue, if you pull out $1 million, it's roughly 0.25%. Let's say we pulled 1 million. I mean, I think the estimate is likely to be much higher, but let's just go with the 1.5 million. Let's go with the 1.5 million that I think our basement is. I think we're likely to hit the $1.5 million mark. And if we divide that by 400, okay, so that's 0.00375%. It's not nothing. Let's do that 3 times. Let's say we do it for December, January, and February. That's 1.125%. Do you remember what Hell Hades said on the previous page? When Pixel United outperformed a declining market by 1%, that's good news. So imagine if we took 1.125% of their revenue away. They would now be losing to the market by 0.1%. If we did it for 4 months, it would be more. If it was 2 million per month instead of 1 million, it would be more. If it's 3 or 4 million a month, it would be a lot more. Let's look at the ceiling. Let's say we're pulling 4 million a month out of 400 million. That's 1%. Do that for 4 months. That's 4%. Now they're losing to the market by 3%. That's a bad sign. That's how little you have to change the revenue of a company to turn it from a well-performing company to a poorly performing company. That's it. If we can pull somewhere between $1.5 and $4 million out of Plarium's pocket for 1 month, they will wake up. If they don't, and we do it for a second month, they'll start going nuts. If we do it for 3 months, we've killed their year. That's it. That's all we have to do. If we can get $1.5 million out of their pockets for 3 months, we have killed their year. We have definitely hurt them. And here's the thing. I don't think we have to do that. We don't want to do that. We're not trying to hammer on Plarium. We just want them to come to the table and to start to talk to the community about the things that we're unhappy about. That's all we really want. And I don't think they want it to go this far, and I don't think we want it to go this far, and I don't think HH wants it to go this far. But he said they wouldn't notice. And I'm not sure he really believes that. I think his feeling is probably a bit colored by him being a content creator and having for years given feedback to Plarium and for years having that feedback ignored. I don't think the businessman is talking right now. I think the content creator is talking right now. And I think he's just frustrated and he's underselling our impact. He's underselling their response to that impact because I think he's just fatigued and tired of Plarium. Now, maybe that's not fair. I don't know. I don't know HH. I haven't talked to him. But if this is his honest best assessment, then I disagree with him. And I'm not sure it is. I'm not sure it is. Okay, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit from here.
Right. So unfortunately, what tends to happen is you get these kind of like spirals. You get spiral of upturn or spiral of downturn in businesses. So if a business is growing, then what tends to happen is you get this spiral upturn of innovation, of recruitment, of I guess enhancing products, all those things. Like you get this spiral because it's like we've got more cash, we've got more profit, therefore we can actually experiment. If you're in a downturn spiral, it goes the other way, and it goes the other way quite quickly, I think, in terms of actually we probably don't do what we want it to do. Like if we made a major, we won't, by the way, we don't have enough impact in my opinion, but if we made a major impact to raise,
we do have enough to make a major impact.
Shadow Legends in terms of their bottom line, and we made this kind of like downturn spiral happen. Actually, what happens is you start to you cut costs. Just cutting costs is the quickest way to regain profit, right? So trying to innovate new products or new development of a product is not the quickest way to make more profit. The quickest way is actually, I need to cut heads. Yeah, I need to cut 20% of my heads in this month. That's the brutal reality of business, right? I've been in it. I've had to do it. I hated it. I hated the movement in my previous business. I actually thought it was completely the wrong thing to do. But you've got these pressures from above, from your kind of like senior business saying, you've committed to this, you're miles off the mark. What are you going to do? Yeah, and that's a fact. So developers' heads would go, artists' heads would go way quicker than all of these new improvements would happen. That's my view. Okay, and I've seen it. So that's something to kind of bear in mind. So I don't know if the movement even ever does what we want it to do, even though I know that's the only thing we can do to make any sort of difference.
I want to thank HH for that. That's a really well articulated point. It's not uncommon for companies, when their profits start to flag, to use layoffs as a way to prop up their bottom line. Now, it's a short-term solution. It doesn't work in the long term, but it's not uncommon. And what he's saying here is that if our movement is strong, he doesn't think it's strong enough, but if it is in fact strong enough to create a downward spiral at Plarium, the most likely outcome isn't, in his view, that the game changes. The most likely outcome is that developers get laid off. And then he says something here at the end I want to play again.
So I don't know if the movement even ever does what we want it to do, even though I know that's the only thing we can do to make any sort of difference.
That's the key right there. It's the only thing, and he knows it. It's the only thing we can ever do to make a difference. If we do nothing, there is no motivation for Plarium to change its ways. There is no motivation for Aristocrat to change its strategy. There is no motivation for anybody over there to treat us differently. And HH just said it. This is the only thing we can do. We can go to them and we can say, we're unhappy because this is what we're doing about it. And you're not going to get our money until you talk to us, until you address our issues. If we do those things, one of two outcomes will happen. Either Plarium will wise up, and just like HH says, he didn't think laying off people was the right thing to do at his previous company. And if they agree and they realize that the solution is right there in front of them and we're actually offering it to them, then they will engage with us. They'll say, you know what? We don't want people to be laid off. We don't want to lose profits. We want to listen to our player base, and we want to pay attention to what they have to say and address their concerns. And if we do, the player base promises to respond positively, and we'll go back to spending. And that will, in fact, maybe potentially even increase profits in the long run. Or they can do the bad thing. They can do the wrong thing. And they can say, screw you guys. We're not changing our ways. And instead, we're going to view it as a failure of our company to execute our financial strategy. And we're going to lay people off. Now, HH has something to say about this. You should hear him close this out.
Which makes me just, I struggle with it. I struggle with it because I've seen this type of stuff. Not what we're doing. I've seen the type of reaction to downturns in business, and it's not pretty, actually. And I wouldn't want for, the raid guys to lose their jobs, honestly. That's the way I look at it. It's like, these people are not the Plarium greed or the Pixel United greed or even the Aristocrat greed. These people are just me and you that have got a job. And they want to keep their job. That's it. So I don't know, guys. It's a real tough one, but a real interesting one to debate. Yeah, I'd love to know what you would want as your outcome from doing a no dime December.
And that's it. So 2 things there. One is he says he doesn't want anybody to lose their jobs. And the second thing is he wants to know what you want as the outcome. So I'm going to address both points. The first one is we're going to talk about the job loss. I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. What I want is for Raid to get healthier. And if Raid gets healthier, Plarium will do better. They will make more money. Simultaneously, the lives of the players and the experience of the players in game will get healthier. When you have a healthy experience in a game, when you have a pleasurable experience in a game, when you trust the company that is producing the game, you are more willing to spend money. That is the message that I want Plarium to hear. If they give us better value, we will give them more money. That's what it comes down to. It's all about money on their end. I get that. But for us, it's also about the money to some extent, right? Now, as far as the job loss is concerned, and this is where I do disagree with HH, and I respect that opinion. I understand. He knows these people. He's worked with them for multiple years now. It is not my responsibility to sacrifice myself, my health, my revenue to prop up a company that is taking advantage of me so that the people who are taking advantage of me can have jobs. I have no interest in them losing their jobs. I have even less interest in being taken advantage of so that they can have jobs. It is not my responsibility to say, I should only be paying $50, but I'm going to pay $150 so that these people can have jobs. That's absurd. That's not the way the world works, and that's not the way it should work. If the people at Plarium, the artists and the developers, are just trying to have a job and they're not the ones who are being greedy, then they should communicate with their superiors and say, we think we could do it a better way. And if they're afraid of losing their jobs, I understand. Now, if the company, Aristocrat, can't adapt to the change in the market force, and we are the change in the market force, when consumers demand change, companies that don't change go out of business. And that will hurt people. That will hurt people. But it will also improve life for everybody who remains in that market. The companies who adapt will do better. Their employees will receive higher salaries. Those companies will expand and hire the employees that left the other companies that failed. The consumer base will get more value and live richer lives. It's a balancing act going on right now, right? And what we're saying is not, hey, fire everybody. What we're saying is all you have to do is listen to our demands and find a way to implement some reasonable change. And if you can't do that and your response is to lay off people, and if you can't do that and your response is that this game dies, then that's what's supposed to happen. I mean, unfortunately, that's the only way like institutional change ever happens. This is what I was talking about before. I think that this discussion is highly valuable to all gamers. If Plarium dies, if the gacha market crashes, because we as players asked for change and they ignored us and we collectively said no and never paid another dime and the company went under, how incredibly empowering would that be for gamers? How many gaming companies would sit up and pay attention and say, you took down the #1 squad RPG in the world because they wouldn't listen to you? You just took them out. That would be crazy. That would be an insane amount of power shifting to the gamer community. And other companies would stand up and notice right away. And they would start changing their monetization practices, and they would start changing their community outreach program. So I think that HH has a very human reaction here. He doesn't want people to lose their jobs. And I'm sorry about that pose, by the way, HH.
Uh,
we'll get you in a little bit better pose there. Sorry about that. Nobody looks good paused, by the way. Sorry. But he had a very human reaction. He doesn't want people to lose their jobs. That's fine. But from a big picture perspective, right? The lesson we're trying to teach is that companies need to give value to get value. And when they start abusing their consumers, the consumers have more power, right? As an individual, we have less power. Corporations will always have more power. They have more money. They have more people. They have more resources. They have more, whatever they want. A corporation is always stronger than an individual person. But no company is stronger than the collection of their consumers, of their clients. We're the ones who pay for all of those assets. We're the one who pays for the lights in their studios. We're the ones who pay for the buildings they own and the travel that they go on and the computers that they work on. We have paid for all of that. And so if we stop paying, all that goes away. And that's the way it's supposed to be. I want to thank HH. Obviously, I've disagreed with him several times. And, I'm sure he would disagree with me several times, but I really appreciate his voice. He brought up several interesting concerns. He elevated the discussion with this video, and his concerns are valid and they needed to be addressed. And I hope I've addressed some of them here. And I hope he watches this video and maybe it helps to change his perspective a little bit and gets him on board with No Dime December, because it feels to me like he's an undecided. He's on the fence, but he said he knows it's the only thing that will ever change things. So I hope that he adds his voice to ours, because it's a loud, powerful voice and it's an important one in the community. Okay, so that's it for this one. I did say that at the end of this video, I was going to answer the question, what do we want from Plarium? But in fact, I think I've had you watch enough of me in this one video. So I'm going to make that a second part. I'm going to do a two-parter, and I'm going to give my answer to what do we want from Plarium in that video instead. So I want to thank HH, first of all, for putting out this video. I think he gave us a lot of insight. He presented information in the way only he can. And it was a lot of very good information. Just because I disagree with him doesn't mean I don't appreciate his side, or doesn't mean that I don't think he had valuable insight to add to the conversation. So, definitely, please, this is not in any way, shape, or form a call out of HH. I'm not trying to pick a fight with him. I think he did a great job, and I really appreciate him taking this so seriously. So that is it for me. I would like to hear in the comments below, what do you think about HH's original video? What do you think about my response? Did you learn something today? Did anything here convince you in one way or the other about the potential effectiveness of the No Dime December movement? Yeah, I would love to hear from you. Don't hesitate to also come to our Discord community and DM me directly with any feedback that you have, because I would love to hear from you and get more people and more voices in on this conversation. Okay, that is it for me. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Thanks for taking this topic very seriously. I hope that we can make it work, and I hope that we see change in the game that is meaningful to both the players and to Plarium. Don't forget to watch my part 2 of this video so you can get the answer to my question, what do we want from Plarium? And I will see you in that video very soon.